Mm-hmm. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to NATO Talk. We're talking world
Yes,
politics before you get started with
yes,
comics.
yes. I will be the one defending Donald Trump, even though Donald Trump has not been president for 4 years, but he's still the.
I want to see you defend manga from DC.
Nah.
I don't think I showed this when I got it a couple of weeks ago. It's just a DC sampler.
Mhm.
And we've got a Joker. These are all done in Japan. We've got Batman, who's really Iron Man. It has always been sort of my
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? They always put the if you want to make manga, you put the guy in an armor.
right.
In an,
It's got it has always been my contention that once Batman uses too many gadgets, he inevitably becomes Iron Man.
yeah, that is true.
He's just got in this one. He can fly. He's got armor.
Mhm.
And then there's Superman, who's pretty much seemed to be like 1950s TV show Superman.
Well, that comic is evil. And I can prove it's evil. Cover the N. Cover the N.
Cover
the N. Cover the N with your finger. What do you get?
Mang?
No, cover the N.
Oh, the N.
What do you get? Yes. But seriously,
it wasn't terrible or anything. I just have zero interest in.
Yeah, the thing is,
DC.
we've had this type of thing in U.S. comics for decades.
Yeah,
it's called Frank Miller in Daredevil.
Read more DC manga on DC Universe Infinite. Get DC manga in print starting in September 2023.
That's not going to get people to read. Even the people who like both superheroes and manga, they like superheroes and manga, not superheroes manga. That is the pineapple pizza of comics.
There's a good there's a good analogy. I don't know how many people are going to be into it, but there it is. Would Wilson, would you be into
pineapple
manga
pizza
from DC with DC Japanese made DC comics?
I would be interested in lettering it.
I do not. Well, Wes Abbott is lettering it.
Okay.
I think I've seen that name before.
These manga things doesn't do anything for me. I bought the Spider-Man ones when they came out. But those were original stories that happened in Japan.
So I think these are original stories that happen in Japan. I think that's what these are.
I would probably be interested in checking them out, but it's not really my thing. Right. I've lettered a ton of manga, so I have no hate for manga because it paid for the studio. So I'm happy with manga and I'm happy with DC. So that being said, I probably would not go out to get it. But
the Joker is done by Satoshi Miyagawa, illustrated by Keisuke Gotoyu, and same writer for Superman with Kai Katago on art, and Batman is written by Ichi Shimizu and Tomohiro Shimoguchi. Same one. Is that no, it's a different one. And that's written and illustrated by the two of them. So it's definitely by Japanese people.
Okay. So the actual mangaka. Well, it shouldn't be too hard. I mean, mangaka don't actually make that much money. That's why they kill themselves to death.
And it's a licensed product, so they probably make even less.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that's why Japanese comic traders work themselves to death.
DC Comics does not read or accept unsolicited submissions. I don't know why that's in their indicia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but we knew that.
Yeah, I guess they're telling you. Let's see who's here to say hello. Good evening, Comic Crack. Yeah. Good evening, Tit Coblin. I'll bite. I love pineapple pizza.
No, bad Canadian. You get
No.
poutine pizza.
Superhero Mongol sounds dull. It was all right. I mean, I read this sampler and it was okay. If I had any interest in Batman, Superman, or the Joker, it was well done. And I mean, they were professional comics, but
you know, and it's also the same. The other problem, it's comics made for the U.S. market, which means they have to dial down on all the all the slashing and that they do in Japanese comics.
Mm-hmm.
It would, I mean, the comics code doesn't exist anymore, but the Marvel and DC are still Marvel and DC.
Right.
You're not gonna get Berserk.
Yeah,
the manga Berserk the manga. I mean,
it was a nice little sampler, solidly okay. Do you remember? What was that?
No, I was going to say that that book technically probably isn't made really for us. So for me, it's like I'm fine that it exists. It's not something I'm going out to get. If I stumble onto it, I would take a look at it. And I'm sure that there are fans of those particular artists who is willing to give them a try.
Yeah, I think it's hard to say. Hard to say if I think it was made. It was probably made for a Japanese audience with a U.S. audience in mind, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's only being sold over here. I imagine someone over there licensed it, said, "Oh, we should make some Batman," or DC went over there and said, "We should make some Batman comics for both markets."
Yeah, and they probably got, hey, let's get the Americans to pay our artists. Right. And we can license. Right. If you only have to pay the licensing fees. Huh. I'm not sure if it's going to sell well in other markets.
Batman feature a big sweat drop. I think Superman would more likely feature that because he seemed more like
Superman doesn't sweat.
Romance comic Superman. Superman has a rumbly tumbly though, or Clark Kent does. Look at that. He's using his super stomach muscles to make it sound like his stomach is upset. A bleeding nose every time he sees Catwoman.
Oh, do they treat each other in Japanese fashion? So sort of like, but the Supermano-san and the Batmano-san.
Every time he uses his powers, a single tear rolls down his cheek. The crying Freeman.
But are they Supermano-san and Batmano-san?
I didn't realize. I saw on my final order cutoff, I think it was last week or the week before, Marvel's publishing Spider-Man India again. Have you seen any of those?
I have not. Even though I was in the comic book shop today, I didn't get to really look at the rack and see what was out there. The character from Marvel India is pretty popular with the latest movie, so I can see them bringing it back out. I would imagine they're going to probably make his designs look more like the movie designs. Probably not the original designs.
I remember Spidey India from the early 2000s. Mm-hmm. They were publishing it then when I was still at Marvel. They had and they were, once again, it was a Spider-Man comic licensed to India. And they were making their own version of Spider-Man, and I guess Marvel. And I'm wondering, are they still making Spider-Man in India? Is this reprinting that old stuff, or is this all new Spider-Man India stuff? I have no idea.
I think there's new stories.
I don't know. I didn't pick up the latest previews. So I'm not too sure what's coming up.
And I doubt that they've been publishing Spider-Man India since the last time it came out in the US. Yeah. Just doesn't compute.
That's what I was wondering.
I don't know, but I'd be surprised if it were.
Huh. Good evening, Lord Tatman. What did you guys think of DC's Lucifer by Mike Carey? I'm about to read the second omnibus. I have never read Lucifer by Mike Carey. I'm not a huge fan of Lucifer characters. Is all I got. I've just never seen anyone do anything interesting with a devil type character.
Well, even if you try to make him sympathetic, you're always going to go, please allow me to introduce myself.
Right.
I'm a man of wealth and taste.
That's what that's what the take always is, sympathy for the devil. And I've just rarely been interested in it. That's the only reason I haven't read Lucifer.
Although
Wilson
if you
never got any pictures of India Spider-Man.
But a few years ago, Mike Carey came here for a science fiction convention, and I interviewed him. So the video is still on my YouTube channel. So go and find it.
Right. I hear Carey's run is incredible. Yeah, I'm sure there are people who like it. It's just not a thing I like. I'm just like
I enjoyed the TV show, but it's nothing like the comic at all. And so,
typical.
Again, it's one of those things where it's like, hey, it was fun, but it wasn't the comic. The comic, I do recall picking it up when it came out because we got it with our bundles. And I know I read through it and they were interesting, but not necessarily groundbreaking. It's kind of what you expect it to be. But there was fun stuff in it.
Ties into Sandman, which I've yet to read. I've only read a little bit of Sandman, and I've never liked it. So
sure, it's a spin-off, but the idea was always that you were going to be able to read Lucifer. You know, Lucifer retires from being the devil and opens up a bar, and then things happen because it's still Lucifer. Apparently, that's how you can describe this series. I haven't read it either, but I knew that the premise was Lucifer retires from being the devil and opens up a bar.
I've never been a fan of comic book writers working out their religious problems in comics. That's just never been my genre. I never liked Preacher. I've never liked. It's just I just find it boring. It's like, all right, we know you have problems with religion, so everything's evil. I'm just like, all right, I know where this is going. I've seen it before. He's a very minor character in Sandman.
And Preacher as one particularity, because as usual, a lot of people get fixated on the surface details. So there's all the drinking and chain smoking and sex and gory depictions of gory yet funny depictions of death, and people glommed onto that. And whenever they hired Garth Ennis, that's what they expected, and that's what he gave them.
Right.
Also, there's this strange fascination in that some editors have in hiring a guy who hates superheroes to write superheroes, which is how we end up with the Punisher.
Sandman seems to be popular. Yes, he does. You will find most people, think it's one of the best ever. It's just not my taste.
When I read it, and again, we were getting the books for free. So when I read them, I enjoyed them. I enjoyed them a lot because they were well written. But I haven't gone back to them. So for me, it was like, it was a fun read.
Right.
The only Sandman book I ever bought was a Merv Pumpkinhead one-shot.
I think the most I've read Sandman is the Chris Bacalo Death miniseries. I actually read that whole thing and liked the pictures a whole lot. But I think Neil Gaiman is one of those people I think is a good writer. He just doesn't write anything I'm interested in. I just don't like. I remember one of the things the most Neil Gaiman stuff I've read is the stuff that Craig Russell has adapted.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a few of them. There's a few things he's adapted, and I enjoy the Craig Russell part a whole lot. But most of the time, the subject matter doesn't interest me. Like there was one that particularly stands out. I just loved the Craig Russell adaptation. I loved his art and his storytelling, but it was something about the beginnings of heaven and hell and angels not doing the right thing. And it was just like, oh, I just find that tedious.
I like Books of Magic, the original miniseries, the one with
Right.
4 different artists. And that thing predates Harry Potter.
Right.
So when Harry Potter came out, oh, did you know there's a boy wizard? Yeah, I've known there's a boy wizard for years.
Book of Magic.
Yeah, the thing, Books of Magic, it isn't really an adventure tale. There you have the whole point that it's the new Wizard of the Ages and all that. But that thing is kind of a trip around the world. It's not too dangerous. There's little amount of danger, like when you go to your grandparents' farm and you go out exploring the wilderness around the farm, and something can happen to you, but it usually doesn't.
Right.
So it's kind of what he's doing, and it ends up being an interesting way of redoing history of the DC universe as history of the magical DC universe. But there's kind of you follow the kid around with John Constantine and the Phantom Stranger, and there's a little bit of danger, and there's all these cameos from all of the cool characters that you've heard of, from the past, present, and future. So in that regard, it's fun.
That's cool.
And that's the thing about Neil Gaiman's writing. He has fun, even when he's not. Even when he's being super intelligent, he's not pretentious. He's not trying to tell you how smart he is, which Grant Morrison at several times in his career was.
Yeah, like I think Neil Gaiman is a good writer. He just doesn't write to my taste.
Yeah, but it keeps you engaged in the characters. I especially like Neverwhere, which I first read as the novel. Then I never saw the TV series, but I bought the comic. Actually, the novel's better, and it's a pretty good read throughout.
Yeah. I think you probably can't go wrong with Sandman, Lord Tapman. Like I said, I don't like it, but that's not because it's a bad comic. It's just because it's not my taste. So most people, I'm fixated on absolute editions. Absolute editions are nice, except sometimes they're tough to read. They're so big and cumbersome. Unless they're the ones that are bound well and open flat, I don't like them that much.
Yeah, I don't know how many trades Lucifer has, but Sandman, it's 10 trades. 11 if you count the graphic novel by Yoshitaka Amano that came out later. And there's the Death the Death mini series, which are the Dreaming's never been collected, but the Dreaming is kind of when you do the anthology set in the universe and you ask your friends to contribute some stories. That's what...
Hey, you want to get on this Sandman gravy train?
Yeah.
See, Mind the Comic says Sandman has so many artists and it never became boring, in my opinion. I do prefer the parts not tied with the endless Sandman and his siblings. Okay.
Yeah, but if you read it in trades, it's 120 to 160 pages each one. It's not too bothersome a read.
Enjoyed reading Moore's Swamp Thing in absolute form. Yeah, Moore's Swamp Thing is just really good. I mean, you can read that in any form. Like the only reason when I don't like those big hardcover editions is when they're not bound well. And there's plenty of them that don't open flat. That's the only thing I don't like about them. If you get some of those badly bound ones, things get lost in the spine. And it's kind of, you have kind of to flatten it out and turn your head and read it. And I just kind of ruins the experience for me. It takes me out of the story if it's badly bound. Not all of them are. Just reread more Swamp Thing in trades. Yeah, it's good stuff. Real tough to read. In trades, a bit. I'm going through the Promethea now. Yeah, Promethea is dense. I haven't read that one in a lot of years, but I got the original issues of it. I think I started out with Promethea in the original issues and then dumped off it when it got dense, then came back to it and got the issues. But including the issue you unfold and read as a giant poster.
Prometheus good. I mean, it's another case of where Alan Moore. There's a reason why, and Alan Moore taught Neil Gaiman how to write fiction. Right. And Alan Moore also doesn't try to tell you how smart he is.
Right.
And there's a lot. It's almost like a treatise in hermetic magic. So
he's explaining the Kabbalah a whole lot in the later issues.
Yeah, I think Tom Strong is overall a better read because it's fun.
Yeah, Tom Strong is a fun read. It's completely different than Promethea. Completely different ambition. Those old Swamp Thing trades have amazing watercolor sketches. Yeah, I have all the original issues except maybe the very first one of Alan Moore's Swamp Thing. Because what's funny is once again, I don't know where in the early 80s I used to hear it's like, because there was no internet. And I remember, like, I think Alan Moore came on issue 20 of Swamp Thing, right?
Yeah, he wrapped up Marty Pasco's run, and 21 is he dies, and 21 is the anatomy lesson.
Okay, yeah. So it's like when Swamp Thing, the Marty Pasco, and it was a Tom Yates drawing it. When that was relaunched in the early 80s, and I started buying that one, I bought maybe 8 or 10 issues of it before I got bored with it because it really wasn't very good. And then after Alan Moore got on Swamp Thing, I got maybe Alan Moore's 3rd issue because I'd heard, oh man, you have to check out this new guy, Alan Moore, writing Swamp Thing. So I did, and then I bought them all from then on in because it was really good. But it's like, I don't even know where I heard. It's like, I knew I read everything, but it's like, where were, and I wish I could remember, it's like, where were like current events in comic books in 1981? I must have heard it because the comic shop opened near me in 81. So I must have been buying whatever magazines or whatever was out there about comic books. And that's where I heard that Alan Moore Swamp Thing was good, and which is why I picked it up. But it's like, I'm like, where did I hear this? Who told me? Because it's not like, the internet where something is good and you can see tweets about it. It was like, it had to be published in something for me to hear that Alan Moore's Swamp Thing was very good. And for me to hear about it in a couple of months, that's a pretty quick turnover in those days. So it's like,
Wouldn't DC houses?
What was that, Wilson?
So wouldn't it be something like a DC house ad?
No, it wouldn't be a house ad. It had to be something like Amazing Heroes, maybe.
Okay.
Or some book
sense.
like that. Because, DC's house ads would have no effect on me besides me being able to follow who was doing it. Mm-hmm. It was definitely people praising the book. The Kayfabe guys recently showcased a Moore book with a short drawn by Gaiman. I'm searching for a cheap lead of an extraordinary gentleman. Absolute. Good.
By the trade.
Gaiman can draw?
Yeah, I'm surprised. I knew Alan Moore can draw.
Yeah. Moore started out wanting to be a cartoonist, but and I actually
did you know that Gaiman came up with the Sandman for George R.R. Martin's Wild Cards universe?
Yeah.
And Martin refused.
Well,
it's a good thing. I mean, it would have been a character lost inside the Wild Cards universe, which liking Wild Cards is a bit like liking Remo Williams. There's that group of fans that really like it, and then there's everyone else who never heard of it or don't care at all.
In the early 90s, led by our friend Steve Bunch in the Marvel bullpen, there was about half a dozen people passing around those Wild Card books. They loved them. I never read one just because I was never interested.
Oh,
But it was like every time a new Wild Cards book came out, it was like got passed around the bullpen by about half a dozen people and they'd come up and they'd talk Wild Cards and they thought it was the coolest thing.
It's not the type of thing that's somebody's going to look at that. Wow, this is amazing. This looks amazing. I'm going to try it. It never is. With Wild Cards, it's always somebody said, "Oh, you got to read this. You got to read this. You got to read this." Okay, I'll read this.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, that's my main memory of Wild Cards is bunch of other people just loving it in the early 90s. It was just the coolest thing. Have you read Wild Cards yet? You got to check out this. Then a new one come out. Have you seen the new Wild?
A group of friends just like that where Wild Cards were the main thing. Thinking back about where you might have got the news from, the magazines that would have been out, and I remember buying a few, would be Comics Feature, Amazing Heroes, Comics Journal.
Right.
Those were like the main ones that were
bought those when I could find them. But I don't remember them coming out, that often enough to hype some stuff sometime. Like where, but I guess they did. I mean, I would always buy them if I had it. But then there's also like, I loved the stuff. I was just showing someone on YouTube. But like, do you remember like the X-Men Companion Volume 1 and 2, the X-Men Chronicles, the Daredevil Chronicles?
And like, Spider-Man had it as well. And I remember
those
buying
were kind of like books that were almost like, nowadays they'd be equivalent of like a website dedicated to the history of Daredevil. And I bought all of those that I could in the early 80s. If I found it, I was buying it. So.
And I didn't even know they weren't printed by Marvel when they came out.
Yeah, Fantico, I think, published the Chronicle ones.
Something like that, yeah. And again, but there were so many books that would like pop up and then disappear. There was one called Comics Times.
Okay.
Then you had, Comic Shop News, I think was always around. But that was more you would get it from a comic book shop.
Right. That was later on. That wasn't really the early 80s.
Comics Journal, Comics Feature. Heavy Metal Magazine didn't really put anything in that, but they were...
It all blurs together to me now. I have no, specific memory of where I learned these things, The comic book zeitgeist that was around in the late 70s, early 80s, wasn't like it is today. So it's kind of like...
There are a lot of characters and books that I can tell you when they start and end, but I can't for the life of me establish the same continuity for comics magazines. I don't know when they start or get canceled.
I have no the comics and I know I picked up Alan Moore's Swamp Thing because I had heard it was so good, but that wasn't people telling me it was so good. That was magazines or something telling me it was so good. Because I knew some people who collected comics when I was a kid, not a ton. But I was always out ahead of the curve in terms of, liking stuff that was new and out there, like Alan Moore's Swamp Thing. It took people years to catch on. It took mainstream fans years to catch on to Alan Moore's Swamp Thing. Just like it took mainstream fans years to catch on to the new X-Men. As John Byrne always points out, it was a cult book when he was on it. And the sales actually went up when he left it. And I can attest to that because when Byrne's X-Men was in its heyday in like the up until like just before the Dark Phoenix story, I couldn't get people to read it. I'd be like, the X-Men is great. You have to read the X-Men. The X-Men, I don't want to read that. That was sort of the mainstream fans' idea of the X-Men. It was uninteresting.
Yeah, I think the X-Men caught on faster in foreign markets.
Yeah,
because they appeared a lot on covers in foreign editions. Even
and it's probably
Bird's
hot
X-Men
by then, right?
Yeah, it was probably hot by then in the US.
In the US,
when it started, it wasn't yet. But I think the X-Men was always that type of book that an editor would read it and like it. And if you were publishing Marvel as anthologies, you'd try to get the X-Men in there.
Yeah. But
The
I think
Brazilians certainly did.
my first X-Men that I bought off the stands was John Byrne's first X-Men. I had a few of the Cockrum issues before then, willy-nilly, that I got from somewhere. But I started collecting the X-Men regularly when John Byrne started. Not that I knew who John Byrne was at that point, because I'd only read the Cockrum X-Men until then. Mm-hmm. That made me seek out more of John Byrne's work, of course.
Yeah, in Brazil, when Editora got the rights to finally got the rights to publish X-Men, they went on a John Byrne spree. They even published a Star-Lord story.
Yeah.
And they wanted to publish anything that had John Byrne's name on it. Huh. It got to a point where there were only 2 names, two creator names that they could put on the cover, and it would be a sales instrument, which were John Byrne and Frank Miller. Those were the those were the only ones. This issue has a Frank Miller story. Everybody rushed to it.
I finished up a collection this week. I finally got Palookaville #2, which came out in, when did this come out? 1990. It's got very yellow pages too, which is funny because #3 has better paper. 1991 by Seth. You can see the yellowish paper there as compared to that. But it's like, I noticed because the first issue of this I ever got in 1991 or 2 was issue #3. That's where I started buying the book. And I think It's a Good Life If You Don't Weaken started shortly after that. So and it took me years and years to get issue 1 and 2, because there was really, besides filling them in, there was not a big reason to get issue 1 and 2. Like I said, issue 1 is an issue that sellers want to be expensive, and I've seen people selling it for like $100 or $200, but nobody buys it at that price. I got mine like last winter or last year for like $10 or $15 eventually, just by waiting years. And this one, I think it was about $12 with shipping. I was like, you know what? I may as well finally get issue 2. And it's good stuff. I mean, it's funny because I didn't realize that this story in issue 2 continues and ends in issue 3. So I had read issue 3 many years ago. I don't remember the last time I read it. But I read this, and it's just about a young teenage kid working at a seafood restaurant, and fooling around with the boss's wife. Nice Seth story, good stuff. And I read issue 3. I read that. I'm like, I have to see how this story ends. I got to read issue 3. So then I read issue 3 after, and it's just nice to have them all finally, even though there's no reason, there's no compelling story, but this has also never been reprinted in anything. So it's either you get this original issue or you don't have it. But it was fun to get finally fill in that last issue of Palookaville, even though I don't know anybody else who collects Palookaville. But it's good stuff. And I wonder if it's sort of autobiographical.
If somebody did a web series about the history of underground comics of the 80s and 90s, Palookaville would have to be one episode, right?
Yeah. I wonder if that was like because the story is about, I think he's like a late teenager working at a local seafood restaurant. So I got to figure Seth must have worked at a local restaurant at some point, because otherwise, why would you write about it? Why would you write about working at a local seafood restaurant if you didn't do that? That doesn't seem like a topic that someone would pick knowing nothing about working at a restaurant.
Yeah, when they say write what you know, but of course that's boring, because a lot of people want to write about exciting things, but they haven't lived it. So
specifically wrote about what he didn't know. You told me that once.
Yeah, but there are two. Ultimately, there are two things that you can write about.
Yeah.
Things that things that happened to you, and things that you wished had happened to you.
They were just discussing one day, and Higgins, who was sort of infamous for his Power Pack story, where he turned a kid and he had the kid slowly turn into a horse or something like that.
Oh, I heard about that. Yeah,
And I never read it.
I
And we
only
were
read
talking about it in the bullpen one day. He's like, "Yeah, I just figured I'd turn the kid into a horse." He's like, they say write about what you know. I like to write about what I don't know, and so I turned the kid into a horse.
Yeah,
okay.
I heard about it because there used to be a Power Pack fan site back in the early days of the internet, but I only read the Wheezy and Brigman run. I didn't even read the John Bogdanov stories. They weren't published here, so I didn't read them. I didn't like Power Pack. I mean, I'm not supposed to, I guess.
Yeah, me either. I was too old for Power Pack.
But
it was well done.
I wasn't. I was about what 7 when those started appearing here.
Right.
So it kind of makes sense. But there was a point when I was 15 and they were still publishing because they weren't publishing Power Pack regularly. They published a story here, a story there. Sometimes if they continued, it would appear for 2 or 3 months. Then it wouldn't come back for another year.
I probably bought maybe the first year of Power Pack, just because. And now eventually, when did that originally come out? The early 80s?
Yeah,
that was I think 82.
It was before I kind of gave up on Marvel and DC.
Might have been 83.
Still buying stuff.
So the Dark Phoenix saga ends in 81, yeah, and then Wheezy starts writing. She quits being an editor and starts writing. So it would be 83, I think, when each number
cover
one comes
date
out.
84.
84.
That was just probably Power Pack was one of the last new series I tried out from Marvel, because right around 84, 85, 86, I stopped buying Marvel and DC altogether. I was only buying indie stuff. Was Power Pack
May
also
1st,
a graphic novel first? What 84?
No, it started off as a regular.
Okay, I'm confusing it with
May 1st, 1984.
There is a Cloak and Dagger Power Pack graphic novel.
Okay.
But Power Pack
about
started
91.
It as a regular comic book.
Yeah. No, it was New Mutants who started in the graphic novels and then continued. But there is a Power Pack Cloak and Dagger graphic novel. I think it came out around 90 or 91.
And the other random comic I got to add to my pop art collection, even though it's surrealism, is Little Dots, Uncles and Aunts, number 33. We'll give you a good look at it.
Okay. That's unexpected.
So there's the guy with a surrealist painting.
Mm-hmm.
And his brush is dripping dots onto the floor, which Little Dot is making into her own abstract expressionist paintings.
Yes, that's OCD.
And Uncles has a $ through the S. So I guess it's a Richie Rich thing too. But I picked this, not cheap. This cost me $18. But I picked it up. When did it come out? It's in good shape too. August 1970. They said on eBay it was an 8.0, but I think more of a 7.0. But it's in good shape. But like I said, I got it just for to go with my pop art comics that I got. The Archies and other ones that I got for their pop art covers. I think it fits in with them.
Yeah, the guys who got priced out of superheroes have started to turn to Harvey Comics and Dell Comics and romance series from Marvel and DC.
There was a guy in my LCS this week who asked if they had a Dell section. I was like, I don't think so.
Well, if the story is specialized in Golden Age and Silver Age comics, it might have a Dell section.
Yeah, they didn't have a Dell section. No Dell section at my LCS. Nope. That completes my run of Palookaville. Yes. Congrats. I collected as well, but didn't find it around. I had to buy 1 and 2 off of eBay. I would have never seen it otherwise. But I don't look for back issues. But I don't think a lot of shops have back issues of Palookaville. You're probably going to have to go online and find them. I was the 5th power pack in a green suit. Can't remember my powers.
You had the powers of creating a power pack suit with buttons on the right side.
I have the power of Grayskull.
That was He-Man. I am Prince Adam by the power of Grayskull. I am He-Man. Prince Adam, where did you go?
Why does this guy look like you but with a tan?
Yeah.
Aha!
Yeah, and people complain about Clark Kent's glasses.
At least it was glasses.
Speaking of people with a tan, in my this week's Gatsby news, I actually read this book, Jay Gatsby, A Black Man in Whiteface, by Janet Savage. And it was pretty interesting. This is the one that postulates that Gatsby in the book was a black man passing as white. And that's what Fitzgerald meant him to be. That was a pretty interesting read. It's a pretty short little thing. And she said it was actually based on a bunch of her Facebook posts. So there's, who is Francis Scott Key Fitzgerald and why did he write about race? And so she goes through all her evidence, both in Fitzgerald's life and in the Gatsby book itself, for Jay Gatsby being a black man in whiteface. I found it a pretty interesting read, especially since, as she says, Jay Gatsby being a black man in whiteface actually doesn't change any of the themes of the book. It just sort of emphasizes some. It gives another level to because the whole book is about the American dream and Jay Gatsby trying to enter into rich society, but he's a gangster and he can't win his high society girlfriend because he's from the wrong social class, and just having him be a black man in whiteface just kind of adds to that whole theme. It doesn't actually take away from it in any way, which I thought was an interesting thing. But it was a fun book to read for those of you interested in Great Gatsby stuff, as I am. I should be getting my special hardcover. These Kickstarters also take so long to get here. If you remember, I ordered, I think back in March, that Gatsby signed, boxed, hardcover, collected edition from Clover Press one I was buying by, who's that Portuguese artist, Coelho?
Yeah.
What's his first name?
George,
yeah. That one. Last I knew, it was being printed in China, but I think it takes a slow boat to get over here. So they got to put those on a container ship.
It's not just the price of printing in China; it's also the cost of transportation from China. Right. They do take the slow boat.
Yeah, literally, it's a cargo ship that slowly comes over. Mm-hmm. So I was like, okay. I've been getting more Kickstarter stuff this year than I ever have before. I'm on my second Dean Haspiel Kickstarter. I got that one I showed last week, the digital version of Terry Moore's art book Kickstarter. I got that Gatsby Clover Press Kickstarter. I got the Gatsby playing cards Kickstarter that I mentioned before. What other one is there? I got the Buddy Scalera did a Kickstarter, who is somebody I know from Wizard. He was an editor at Wizard back in the day. He's done other things in comics too, but he writes comics too. Matter of fact, I have to read that one. Sometimes if they're digital, I forget to read them. So I'm going to go read that one. It was 4 issues of something. I can't remember what. But is After Hours Press his, or is that? I don't remember.
It's After Hours
I
Press,
remember. Yeah. So I got that one, and there's some other one I just did digitally too that I can't remember now. But yeah, but like I said, it's the most expensive way to buy comics is through Kickstarter.
I also got some Kickstarter books in this week.
That's right. I saw you made a TikTok of them.
Yes, I got the. They're called Kaiju and Cowboys. I was calling it Kaijus versus Cowboys, but it's actually Kaiju and Cowboys. And Frankie B. Washington is the artist on it. So here's the cover to, I believe this is the 2nd issue. I haven't got to read them yet, but it takes place on a planet that has monsters running around, as well as these robots that are supposed to take care of the monsters and get rid of them to make it habitable for mankind. So we're following a few robots going after some monsters. I believe the main robot is named Doc, and then there's a robot named Hunter. And so it has definitely a cowboy feel. The robots do look like various cowboys. So I guess it's, kind of like the Frontier, but with robots and monsters. So it looks really cool. It's hard to see on the camera, but the paper is colored kind of like if it was an old comic book paper.
There's a cream color to it, I can see.
So it definitely has a cream color to the background. And it's a nice, solid artwork. The coloring is very traditional, old comic book coloring.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a lot of fun. Here's the 1st issue.
Kaijus and Cowboys.
And it looks pretty cool. Let me do the credits. It is written by Matthew Blair. It is all the artwork, pencil inks, and coloring is done by Frankie B. Washington. And the lettering is by Mike Stock. And they even open up with like I don't know if this is a real ad or a fake ad, but it has a nice big
but where are the
robot
cows?
that kind of looks like the old robots. So I think those look pretty cool.
Oh yeah.
It's like a GoBot.
Yeah. Or like the their names are escaping me. The Shogun Warriors. Those were popular in the 70s.
Yep. Definitely look. And you said you know one of the guys who does it?
I know Frankie B. Washington from the internet.
Okay.
Basically, there's not that many kaiju artists. There's just a handful of us. So we all kind of like talk together. We have a Facebook page that I run called the Kaiju Comics Network, where we kind of like all talk to each other and kind of try to promote each other to let us, let people know when they're working on a kaiju book or if I'm working on a kaiju book or what happened. And they, a few years back, there was a company called Kaiju Box where they were those subscription boxes.
Right.
So my book, Team Kaiju, issue number 1 was reprinted in that box as a miniature copy of the book. So because they were buying a set of books for this, I added extra pages and offered basically ad pages to all the people that I knew that were doing kaiju related books. I think I charged like $25 a page just to pay pretty much for the print run. And it was really cool because, again, as you know, we always say the comic industry is tiny. And then within that tininess, there's little subclasses, and there's only a few people making kaiju related content. So we all kind of, in a way, know each other through the internet, because we haven't had time to really meet up with each other because obviously COVID, and there's only like one major kaiju convention, which is G Fest, which happened in past July in Chicago. So that's the only other time where you get to meet up with people, but I haven't gone to that con yet. Or I haven't gone to that con in Chicago. They did it once in Manhattan, like 20-something years ago.
R.I.P. Paul Rubens. That was a blow to me this week. Sinead O'Connor was more of a blow to me last week. I've never been a huge Pee Wee Herman fan, so that one didn't affect me so much.
Yeah,
but Sinead O'Connor, I felt that.
Pee Wee Herman is one of those things that every kid in America went through, but it's not well known outside America. Yeah. It was something that we don't care.
Yeah, I was too old for Pee Wee's Playhouse and too sober. All the people I know, all the people I know who are my age who loved Pee Wee's Playhouse used to get stoned and watch Pee Wee's Playhouse.
That makes sense. It's the same reason why they watch Sesame Street, right?
So it's like, since I never got stoned, I never got into Pee Wee's Playhouse. But like I said, Sinead O'Connor, that one hurt. I'm a big fan of her music. I bought her album of Irish songs. I bought her album of standards. I bought all of her albums.
She may have had some mental issues. I don't know exactly.
Trauma was her mental issues. She had a lot of trauma from her childhood.
It kept building up.
Her mother was a monster. And besides that, she had other people abuse her. So it's all trauma from her childhood that her mental issues, if you want to call them that, come from. But yeah, I loved her music. And I was one of the few people who was okay with her ripping up with a picture of the Pope back in the early 90s. I was like, all right, I'm not on the Pope side. You can rip that up. Which was funny because people forget now. Even people who I wouldn't think back then would even have an opinion about that were against her for ripping up a picture of the Pope. And I'd be like, what? You care? I've never heard you mention religion once. They were just upset that she did something outside the norm.
Yeah, but you're a Baptist. Well, yeah. I mean, like it or not, for some strange reason, people seem protective of authority figures.
Yeah. It was weird. Even when they don't necessarily believe in the authority figure. Where are the cows? The Cowboys versus Kaiju. Was Xander Cannon ever in your Kaiju groups?
What was that?
Was Xander Cannon ever in your Kaiju group?
No, I don't think so. No. I don't see Cowboys in here. I mean, cows in here, but
there's Cowboys.
I haven't read it yet. So they may be, or again, they're on an alien planet, so they may be creatures that they're farming, but I don't know. I haven't read them yet.
And it's time for another Cerebus in Hell. Now, I gotta say, man, that Dave Sim is weird. This one, I think, is all about the war between Russia and Ukraine. And I think his main point is that war is bad and the media lies to us. Now, I can't tell you that for sure. Because when you choose to have the main character in your book who explains everything to you be the devil or some character in hell, how exactly am I supposed to take your criticism? Especially when you ramble on about stuff and everything, and it's not Ukraine and Russia. It's infernal Ukraine and infernal Russia, which means they're in hell. They're the versions of them that are in hell. And where is it? A pound of infernal Ukrainians is on sale at infernal Russian markets for $1.99, which is a dastardly crime. They're at least worth twice that. And this is him once again. He's this is Fox News Gena. So it's a parody of Fox News, but you got to call in hell. But you got to call Poe's Law on a parody of Fox News. And for those who don't know what Poe's Law is, it's something that says if you try to parody something that's fun, if you try to parody fundamentalism, it's often difficult to distinguish the parody from the fundamentalism. Because there's always somebody more conservative than you who will say you're wrong, that's not conservative enough, and you don't know if they're joking or not, because it gets to the, and that's what a lot, it's like, is Fox News in hell? How is that different from regular Fox News? Like, At least people don't need to worry about freezing to death. Infernal Russia has apparently ceased exporting any fertilizer. Infernal Russia foodstuffs are being boycotted, so wheat and corn prices are skyrocketing. We'll starve to death before we can freeze to death. This is the devil telling you this. And I'm like, is there a joke there? Then it ends with, where is it? Who needs nuclear war? Our so-called leaders will destroy us with their own Bresteschnaffenkirchen, a parody of a German word that means still waiting to hear back from our lawyers on whether or not we can actually translate this without getting sued. It's like some of the pages have actual jokes on them. Some of them are just like, what? How am I supposed to take this?
Okay.
I don't know if he's making fun of conservatism or it's Poe's Law and he's just more conservative than the. I mean, what kind of conservative uses a parody of Fox News in hell to make jokes, half of which aren't jokes?
Maybe you should get stoned and watch Pee Wee Herman's House.
I think you got to get stoned and read Cerebus in Hell. I don't think there's any other. I think it might be funny if you do that.
Uh-huh.
I think you got to roll up the comic book itself and smoke it to get it.
Yeah. See if the ink does something for you. If Sim was actually more business minded, if he's pretending to be a conservative, you would actually have taken the obvious opportunity to create a T-shirt saying, "Please allow Cerebus to introduce himself. Cerebus is an aardvark of wealth and taste." There. And that's a T-shirt.
And he's got it, and also he's got like weird levels of storytelling here. And if you look at the front here, those two Cerebuses, that's like two versions of Superman Cerebus. He's got like Clark Kent Cerebus and Superman Cerebus, but he's moving so quickly that it looks like he's in two places at once. So he can co-anchor the show with himself.
And he's also using super ventriloquism.
Yes, you've got these Superman parodies in front of the screen. You've got Fox News in hell behind you on the screen. And then you've got the devil telling you stuff too. And it's like, what? What does this mean?
It's very Silver Age in that aspect.
Kent Olsen, that's his Clark Kent character. And like I said, I think it's parodying the media coverage of the war also.
Hmm.
But it doesn't really have anything to say about it. Oh, man. Once again, Dave Sim baffles me.
Well, it is when they hire experts to do those panel shows. And in this case, you could have an entire panel made up of people who have never been to Russia, never been to Ukraine, never been in a war, don't know any Russians, Ukrainians, or soldiers, but are still commenting on the war and being paid to do it. Once I was out, we finished another issue of the Car magazine, and we went out to dinner at 11 p.m. as journalists do when they finish an issue, and they were having a soccer panel show. And my editor-in-chief says, these guys are getting paid to do this, and they're doing exactly the same thing that we are. We can replace them. They don't know anything. It's obvious from listening to them talk that they're not really experts on anything.
I think sometimes I am a masochist for buying that Cerebus nail. There's no doubt about it. I'm one of the. Oh, all right. This issue was also issue 9 of 2 of 1350. So I wonder how many people actually read it. There's got to be a certain amount of people who buy it just for the cover. So out of 1,350 people, how many people do you think read it? 800?
Maybe. I don't
Maybe.
know. Maybe.
Is the cover a parody of something? I can't tell.
Looks like it's a parody of one of the War is Hell books.
War in Hell was a Marvel war book. I don't remember this specific cover.
That reminds me of something. Time Warp #1 from DC.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe? Kind of reminds me of that. No?
It's definitely War. How come my screen switched? That's weird. And it says, never let Infernal CNN see you sweat. But Infernal CNN wasn't in here. It was all Infernal Fox. I don't know. Let's see. We also got the final issue of Mark Miller and Juanin Ramirez Nightclub. This is the one, a vampire story, where in the first issue, there was this kid who wanted to be a YouTube star doing stunts on YouTube and broke his neck and was in the hospital. And a cop came to him and said, hey, you want to be a vampire? I'm looking to recruit some people to be vampires and we got to do some stuff. And he's like, it's either that or be paralyzed the rest of your life. So the kid was like, all right, I'll be a vampire. And so then we don't see the cop for 3 issues. So then the kid turns his 2 buddies, his 2 friends, a guy and a girl, who he was working on the YouTube videos with, turns them into vampires. Like, woohoo, we're the super vampire crew. And they wear Mexican wrestling masks so they can go out in the daylight. They have all the traditional vampiric powers. They can turn into bats, mist. They can hypnotize people with their vampire hypnotism. And they decide they want to fight crime until they run into these 100-year-old super racist criminal vampires who are like, whoa, who are you guys running around? You're either going to join our crew or we're going to kill you. And then they've run into the cop again, and they find out the cop was recruiting them because he was looking for people to defeat these super evil vampires. So the super evil vampires, of course, killed the cop. And last issue ended with the super evil vampire saying, you either join us, and in order to join us, you have to go and kill your own families. Otherwise, we're going to kill your families ourselves, and then we're going to kill you too. So that was the choice they faced at the beginning of this issue. And I always say, I said in my in my YouTube video this week. A lot of times in a Mark Miller story, because I think somebody on here said it, he writes the end first and then writes the story for that. I always say there's some sort of magic MacGuffin that helps them overcome the evilness. Like there was one in Ambassadors, but the magic MacGuffin in this one was just the three kids saying, "You know what? We're going to blow those guys up in their house." So they used their super hypnotism powers on the cops who they knew just busted this terrorist group, and they got C4 explosives from the cops, which for some reason they colored like dynamite in the book. I was like, C4 dynamite. So the funny thing was they were they're going to the vampire's house in the daytime, so the vampires are supposedly all asleep. They hope, and they're chit-chatting as they're planning the C4 until one of them finally says, "Huh, maybe we should be quiet because they've all got super hearing like we do." So of course the vampires actually heard them and came out to kill them when there was a big battle going on. Eventually the three kids won, but it was like I was sitting there going, why are they chit-chatting when they're planting explosives? Shouldn't they be being quiet? And they should have been being quiet. But it was a fun ending, you know. What is this, 5 or 6 issues? 6 issues, double-size issue for the same price. Big fight scene, nice artwork. The Mark Miller stories are all artwork dependent for me because, like I said, he's the master of the expected. He doesn't give you a lot of twists. He doesn't give you a lot of turns, but he can tell a decent, straightforward story. So, but I'd like to, you know, the secret MacGuffin was explosives. Hey, the guy even says, what is this? But there's a third choice, one they never mentioned. We'll kill them before they kill us. And I know how we can do it. It's like, duh, that was the obvious third choice. I don't think they had to mention that to you. Or you can kill us. That was pretty implicit in the plot that you trying to kill them before they killed you and your whole family was probably a good idea. If you could figure out how to do it. Because they couldn't beat them in a straightforward fight because the other vampires were bigger, stronger, and faster. Mm-hmm. What's the last Mark Miller thing you guys have read?
I don't even remember. It would have been a decade ago, if anything.
If I could recommend one thing, it would be Jupiter's Legacy with Frank Quitely. That to me is the best of the Frank Miller projects. 2 volumes.
I think it was Reborn, the one he did with Greg Capullo.
I don't even remember. I don't think I read that one.
Yeah, when people die, they go to a place where they're sort of living in a fantasy universe, and they're always fighting to take down the evil wizard warlord bad guy.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think I read that one at all.
But when you go there, doesn't matter what age you died, you come back in the prime of physical perfection.
Huh. He came out with a new one, I think, 2 weeks ago. I forget the name of it, but it was like a crossover between a lot of his characters. But I picked it up and it didn't look terribly interesting to me, so I skipped that one.
I've watched the Jupiter stuff, like they had a TV show and I think a cartoon stuff, and those I saw.
The TV show was not very good.
But as far as anything read, the last thing I probably read of his was when he was on Marvel stuff. So I don't think I even read any of his own universe stuff. Because by the time, let's see, the Marvel stuff was in 2000. I was out of Marvel at 2004. And then it wasn't too much later, I just stopped buying comics. So I don't really think I picked up much of his stuff.
Yeah, Jupiter's Legacy is his favorite of mine, and the TV show got it all wrong. Jupiter's Legacy is all sort of about behind the scenes politics on a big budget superhero team. Action oriented. And the Jupiter's the TV show, I think there were 6 episodes, and they got to about the middle of issue 2. It was like the series itself was fast moving and action oriented, and the TV show was plotting, and the behind the scenes stuff that Quitely and Miller were doing in 2 or 3 pages was 2 or 3 episodes.
Right.
It was just like,
probably because most likely because I did not read the comics.
Right.
I didn't mind the TV show. I found
it was okay.
Entertaining. I found it entertaining. I enjoyed it.
It wasn't bad. It was okay, but the comic book is much better.
Okay.
But I don't think with the budget they could have done the comic book.
Mm-hmm.
They really couldn't have. Greetings, sleepy readers. My favorite was with the old Flash Gordon character. Oh, that's Starlight was the Mark Miller one with Gordon Parlov. Was that his name? Who drew it? I can't remember. But yeah, it was like Flash Gordon coming out of retirement. It was straightforward. He came out of retirement. He saved the day. It was decently done. No big twists or turn in it. And Mad Cave, I think we mentioned this last week. I saw the official announcement this week that Mad Cave Studios will be doing some Flash Gordon book. I'm like, really? There's people interested in a Flash Gordon comic book?
Are they going to reboot it?
No idea.
Because that's what they've been doing the last few times.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to have a take on Flash Gordon's origin.
That's because there are no Flash Gordon fans under 65, if not 75. So,
yeah, even I am not
with Parlov. Okay.
Yeah, I'm curious about Flash Gordon, but I've never been. Oh, I gotta watch Flash Gordon. I gotta read Flash Gordon.
No one's that interested in Flash Gordon.
No.
The most Flash Gordon fans out there are from the early 80s cheesy movie.
But it's the same thing with the Shadow and Docs. Yeah, and the Defenders of the Earth.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing with the Shadow and Doc Savage. I'm not a fan. They interest me from a cultural point of view.
Right. It's just like there's just not that. They're too old. They've had no current hits in 60 years.
Yeah.
I still, being that we like history, we're interested in them. But I don't think your average person cares one whit about the Shadow or Doc Savage.
Yeah, I like the one where
the niche of a niche.
Yeah, the Shadow, Doc Savage, and the Avenger had a comic together published by Dynamite a few years ago, and I bought it.
Yeah,
it was fun.
You and nobody else.
Yeah, I guess it's true. But yeah, I just wanted to, and probably if they had been solo stories for each of them, I wouldn't even have given a second glance.
Yeah,
but Savage, Doc, Shadow, and the Avenger. Sure, let's see how they interact. I think that, but I think that if you want to write those characters, you should at least try to read some of the novels instead of just reading the Wikipedia entry, just to make sure that you don't do ridiculous things, and especially when they try to modernize the characters, but the story is still set in 1936.
By the way, did you guys hear today's big comic book news? Image signed an exclusive distribution deal with Simon & Schuster.
Yes, that there was I saw a press release earlier today, but I didn't sit and read through it. But yes,
I'm like, who's Diamond gonna have left?
Fantagraphics, I think.
Diamond is still distributing Image's stuff to foreign markets, I think. But I was like, wow,
because
I don't know what Diamond's going to do.
Because Simon and Schuster, they don't distribute to foreign markets. They license their stuff, and local distributors handle their stuff. But they're not interested. Those distributors are not interested in distributing U.S. language pamphlets to specialized stores.
Right.
It's really special. Comic shops outside North America are something that's really, really niche.
Oh, and by the way, the comics I all got this week are all last week's Image comics. This week's comics, once again, not in my store. I'll have to pick them up next week. So these are all these are all from 2 Wednesdays ago. Because Roy, I think, is still on vacation, and these ones somehow got these ones to the shop, but not the ones from this week. Oh well, as long as I have comics.
There you go.
As long as I have comics. Let's see, what else did I get? Oh, I'm really enjoying now this. What is the name of it? The Savage Strength of Starstorm by Drew Craig, Wes Craig's older brother.
I've really been enjoying this. What's it called again?
Well, how to get the overall title, not just Starstorm. It's got the Savage Strength of Starstorm. And I mentioned there's sort of an amateur quality of this I find really charming. Once again, I don't know if it's on purpose or Drew Craig is an amateur, but this seems like the story he came up with in high school, that he's finally doing it as a comic now that he's 40 or however old he is. I don't know. And it really seemed. Have you ever seen comics that high school kids have made, or have made comics in high school with your friends or whatever? It's like this. Because he got there's some space empire out there that he got some magical Power Ranger suit from. So he's got all these powers that he doesn't know how to use. The suit just makes him, and the art, there's an amateurish quality to the art, but there's also some talent there. And then this whole team and the people in outer space want this suit, and he gets eaten by a giant dinosaur, but turns them into frogs. He doesn't even know how. Where's this team of here's this super team from bounty hunters from outer space. What are their names? The bounty hunters of the Imperium. Tigrax, Master Tiger, Tiger Lee, Tiger Lin, Tigron, Tigress, Tiger Soldier, and Grand Tiger Tai. I mean, you got to be in high school to think up your Tiger Squad. No grown-up comes up with that. You had to come up with that when you were like 14. A squad of interstellar tiger fighters. So they go and try to get it from him, and it's just so straightforward. It's like there's no subtlety to the story. There's no subtext. It's all text. There's no subtext. Just like you would write if you were in high school. You'd just be interested in the cool guys from outer space and the cool super suit and the cool girlfriend and the cool zombies. So, like I said, I don't know if it's on, but just let me see if I can show you some of this art. Like that panel right there. All walking together, and there's like an amateur quality to that panel.
And they all have Liefeld costumes.
Yes. Here are some random guy. Definitely an amateur quality to those.
Yeah, posing while flying. This looks like a tryout for Extreme Studios.
Right. There's definitely amateur quality to those faces right there.
Mm.
But I find it all comes together in a charming way. Like you'd have to be a sophisticated professional to be able to pull off so much amateurness, or you have to be an amateur, which I think maybe he's an amateur. But either way, even there's that panel right there. Pretty darn amateurish, but a talented amateur, not an amateur without talent. But like it completely, I find it completely charming. I like the. There's nothing like, and it reminds me so much of like 1980s amateur comics too. Just sort of right before you'd see 1990s amateur comics, which were totally Rob Liefeld influenced. He was influenced by the same people Rob Liefeld was influenced by, but not Rob Liefeld. That's what seems this amateur's quality to me, as opposed to amateurs in the 90s who were all influenced by Rob Liefeld.
Even the logo has that kind of feel to it.
Yeah.
That's an 80s. That's an 80s logo. That's an 80s black and white comic that they added color to.
Yeah. There's something about it I find really charming.
Yeah, actually, even though the costumes resembled Liefeld costumes, the art kind of mixed. Do you remember Captain Confederacy?
Yes, I have. You're right.
The body language and the facial construction.
There's a stiffness, and all the guys are always facing forward or facing to the side. It's what amateurs do because they can't draw all the angles. So they draw the angles they can draw, and they do it over and over. And it's like, and there's some talent. It's as you get more professional, you learn to do all the different angles. And
you'd think that would be easy to get some reference. I mean, we have cell phones, record video.
Obviously, he's not that far along. But like I said, I'm enjoying it thoroughly. It's like a throwback to comics that don't exist. It's what the kayfabe guys call, 1980s outlaw comics. This is kind of this is more influenced by them than anything else. Let's see what's going on here. The Shadow and the Phantom are for Grandpa. Yes.
Hey, the Phantom has had comics published continuously in Norway, India, and Australia. Okay. Trust
Flash
the Norwegian.
Gordon is too blonde. He and the Scooby-Doo guy. Is Canada classified as a foreign market? I think
not when it comes to being the direct market. No.
And it kind of is, but kind of not. Not really.
The direct market distribution system considers Canada to be part of its internal market.
And you don't have to do anything to localize for Canada. You can send them the same stuff we get here in the US of A. Diamond seems to be dead, but doesn't know it yet. Yeah, I don't know.
Here's the thing. Steve Geppi might as well pack it in and sell it. I mean, if he still can. I mean, he's old enough to be retired. Just sell it. Get a 3/4 of a mil or something, and move.
He's already rich. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's why I'm saying 3/4 of a mil, because normally a distribution deal this would be worth more, but.
One of the things that was good about Diamond and Steve Geppi is, as Gary Guzzo always said, he cared about comics. Most distributors never, don't care about comics. Steve Geppi actually cared about comics and wanted them to be successful. I don't know how true that is of Simon and Schuster and whoever else.
No. And the guys who the old guys who used to run sub distributors, they're all old, so they can't take over.
Right.
I don't think there's any store in the US that can become a local sub distributor successfully, especially if we're talking about that the only thing left to distribute are the indie comics.
Right. That's a tough gig.
Yeah. So unless Gary Groth, who is also No Spring Chicken, wants to get into the distribution business, there's no one.
But not an amateur classic suit, let me say.
Yeah, yeah. I wonder if the Comics Journal reviewed that.
Yeah, I have no idea. Let me see if there's any, even something like, take a look at these background characters. This is just a street scene with Starstorm, and look at these characters in the background, just standing there, pinned straight. Then as they zoom in on them, they're just standing there in the same pose, except their faces. He can't even draw the faces like consistent from panel to panel. Then we've got this, ooh, he tried a down shot, but it's such an amateur down shot. They're all standing with their hands at their sides. There's no gesture or pose to any of these people. They're all just standing with their hands at their sides. And once again, that's something you do when you're an amateur and don't know what you're doing. And we don't see amateur comics anymore. We just don't. Even like the crappiest, most amateur productions that you can find in comics don't look like this. They look sort of sloppy and digital and no structure to the drawing. This drawing at least has structure to it, even if it's amateurish. So I really find it charming.
Okay, nothing about Starstorm in the Comics Journal, so maybe Gary Groth would not.
No one is out there pushing Starstorm but me.
Yeah.
I would really like some background on Drew Craig, besides being Wes Craig's older brother. What's he been doing? Did he just decide to draw this comic?
Probably.
He's like, because I just know this is the comic he came up with in high school. He and his brother were probably making comics in high school, and this is the one he came up with. And he finally said, you know what? I'm going to make it.
Yeah, who knows? He maybe had it sitting in a drawer somewhere and decided to print it.
Yeah. And Wes Craig, I don't know if you guys have ever read Deadly Class. Wes Craig is like an A-level talent. He is super good. His storytelling is so amazing, Wes Craig. So it's funny to me that his older brother is the amateur. If it's not some brilliant scheme to draw like an amateur, I don't know.
That crowd scene makes me think maybe that is all part of a package, that there's a reason why it looks the way it looks, and it will be something that will be explained at the end of the series, that there's a reason for it. Whether it's the kid drawing the comic book about himself and it's done on purpose, I don't know. But just seeing that, the thing is with that shot of the crowd, it's amateurish, but you could read it quite clearly.
Yeah.
There's something about their faces and the way they're looking at the audience more so than looking at what's going on.
Right.
In front
That's
of
what's weird too. The only part of it, storytelling wise, that wasn't clear was these 2 pages where here's the big page of him fighting the dinosaur. But in this last panel, let me see if I can get it in there. Between that second to last and last panel, the dinosaur actually swallows him. And you can't really tell that from the storytelling.
Right.
There's just a big sound effect that says snap or roar and then chomp. And the chomp is on. So that's the only part where the storytelling wasn't clear, which is, amateurish, but only one. And this is also the one, if you remember the first issue I showed you, had the page layout wrong. So the first part of the double page spread was on the right-hand side, and then you had to flip it to get the second part of the double page spread. So they even misaligned the first issue.
Which again just seems like,
how can they do that?
how can they
by
do that
accident?
unless it was done on purpose?
Right, unless
So
it was done on
I'm
purpose.
speculating this was done on purpose. That's my guess.
Maybe. I would
I
love
just-
it if it was,
Mhm.
but I don't know. Either way, I'm enjoying it.
Yeah.
Whether it's him being more amateurish than if it's him choosing amateurish style or him being an actual amateur, I love it either way. It's good stuff, but it's just so weird. It is just so weird. Oh, did you guys know the inker who died this week?
I know the artwork itself when I saw some artwork, because I know Patrick,
John Floyd, Patrick Brousseau.
right? Patrick Brousseau made a mention of it,
Right.
and I saw the name. I don't recall the name. I don't recall.
Yeah, I don't either.
Working with his art. I don't know
He
if he did anything from Marvel, but he did stuff
some
with
stuff for Marvel, but he did a bunch of stuff in the 90s, I think it was, they said. Including a lot of Legend of Batman inks or something like that. I forget which book it was, but Patrick Brousseau was trying to get his name out there, and he was a Kubert School guy. Patrick Brousseau was a Kubert School guy. So was John Floyd. So there was a bunch of Kubert School guys who were singing his praises. But he also, do you know the photo he was in that became kind of a meme is what I recognize him from. I was like, oh, that's him in that photo, which is this one. Let me show it to you. Do you remember seeing this? This photo has made its way around the internet.
Yeah, I've
more
seen
than
the
once.
photo. Yeah, I've seen the photo a few times before.
And that's John Floyd. I never knew the inker. I never knew who it was.
Right.
I just thought it was an unnamed kid. But yeah, he just died.
I did not have that many comics when I was 13.
I may have had that many comics. How many comics do you think that is there? That's about 400 comics, I'd say.
Yeah, I didn't have
something like that.
comics.
Yeah,
I probably had 400 comics when I was 13, or close to it. But yeah,
it's like one long box, or maybe 1.5 long boxes. So yeah, I definitely had that when I was that age. And he has some vintage posters up there. So I think that's 70s.
Yeah, I did not have all those. I think they said he died at 61 of pancreatic cancer. So that means he was born in 62. So that'd be about 1975 when he was 13, right around there.
That's what I'm guessing.
Mm-hmm.
Those look like 70s posters.
Yeah. Yeah. John Floyd died of pancreatic cancer this week. So I figured we'd mention him since why not?
Yeah.
Even though I really wasn't familiar with his work, but he was a Kubert School guy who a lot of Kubert School guys were mentioning this week. So figured I'd mention him. There were a lot of people doing work in the 90s for Marvel and DC. They put out a lot of comics.
Yeah, the joke was if you were delivering pizza, there was a chance you could get a book.
He also did storyboard stuff, I think they said, and did did stuff for the movies. I forget which one he did production on. So I guess he also made his living in Hollywood. I guess he did that after comic book inking, because
Yeah, it looks like he did some of the Weapon X stuff. Because I
Yeah,
know he was connected with Barry Windsor Smith.
he inked Barry Windsor Smith on Rune for Malibu, right?
Yes.
And he inked a bunch. Windsor Smith actually hired him. He actually worked in Windsor Smith's studio. And Smith hired him to ink Rune and to ink other of the Rune stuff that Barry Smith didn't pencil so that he could give it a consistent look. Invite the guy over. Drew Craig. We'll interview him. See if he's.
Yeah, we'll do one of those kayfabe style interviews.
Cartoonist kayfabe. Like I really am enjoying that Starstorm comic. I look forward to that issue. There's some nostalgia or something with it for me. Oh, we got the latest issue of Declan Shalvey's Old Dog. This is the one that took a real twist on me last issue. Because the first, what is this, issue 6? The first 4 issues were all about Old Dog refers to, he's an old spy being drawn back into the mix, and typical stuff. It's like nothing you haven't read before. But his daughter is his estranged daughter who doesn't like him is his handler. And he's this crotchety old guy who has to go on a last mission or something like that. Then the 5th issue, all of a sudden he turned into this weird Cthulhu type monster with tentacles and he was like killing everybody in the place and they had to calm him down. It was like, what the hell is this? Where did this come from? And then in this issue we get back to he's on some remote island in Iceland or something, or Greenland, some remote cabin. And to him, that was just like, there's just weird stuff on my insides. There's not even an explanation. And his daughter shows up, and this hit squad shows up because whatever super secret spy group he's worked for, I guess the guest decided to take him out. And they sent his own partner, who also has whatever these weird superpowers are, or he's got his own version of it. And so the whole thing is a fight between those guys. And we still don't know what's going on. We still don't know where these weird powers came from. But it was a cool issue. It was Declan Shalvey and Clayton Cowles is coloring it, I think. Or is he... it's the old find the credits game. What page do they put them on? Page 1, page 4, page 73?
Randomly.
You have to buy that separate.
Oh, they have a random title page here, page 4 and 5. Declan Shalvey, lettering by Clayton Cowles, edited by Heather Antos, cover A by Declan Shalvey, cover B by Greg Hinkle, cover C by Philip Barrett. I always get this weird thing that I always get this weird feeling I'm mispronouncing Declan Shalvey's name because I've never heard a name like Shalvey. Shalvey.
I always assume I'm pronouncing everybody's name incorrectly.
I heard Tim mispronounce yet another name. I can't even remember what it was, but it was like the simplest comic person's name you've ever heard. I'm like, how did he mispronounce that one? But that's Tim and his pronunciation of names. But yeah, another good issue of Old Dog. I must say that I liked that weird twist they gave us last issue, and I enjoyed it. It has revitalized the series for me. That it's not the same old strange, same old, old spy coming back. And one thing I never understand about at some, like with the John Wick movies, at some point your double secret organization has got to go, you know what? Why don't we just let him alive? So he knows a lot of stuff. We're losing 57 guys trying to kill him. And what's he doing but trying to retire? So what? Let him retire. But nope, they just keep saving wave after wave who gets killed. And no one in management is smart enough to say, why don't we just let this guy alone? They should be doing that with Old Dog, too. They sent the super hit team to him, and he took them all out. You know, like they do in these books. If I was with the second super hit team going in, I'd be like, you know what? Why don't I just turn this job down? He just killed 97 other people. I don't want to be 98. We can just let him retire. But nope, they're taking orders, and they're going in. New Conan books interiors look like they were by Buscema. I don't know if that's Robo de la Torre's art style, if it was intentional. It's been selling well at my shop. That guy has been drawing like Buscema for a while now, so I think it's intentional. I've seen some other stuff he's done, and it looks just like John Buscema.
Yeah, I'm looking at his Instagram page, and he's got a lot of other. He's got a lot of other REH characters. There's the boxer. What's his name? I forget.
I think that's become his niche, drawing like John Buscema for Conan properties.
In any case, there's a Zagor cover here. Zagor is an Italian Western character. It looks more like Hubert than Buscema. But yeah, it's close enough.
Yeah, I like the.
So Colleen, I think that's his. I think that's his shtick. Yeah,
I like the Colleen Duran cover on that Conan #1. She showed it on Twitter, and I was like, oh, that's pretty good. Enjoyed it. But I guess I think I put Conan #1 on my pull list. We'll have to see next week when those comics come into. They came out this Wednesday. I'm getting them next Wednesday for these 2 weeks. Wilson, that cat is there for 100 minutes. Super well behaved.
Yeah, he's fed, so he's quiet. He just likes to hang out there on the corner of my art desk. And he's quiet until he's not. And because he's deaf, he has no control of how loud he gets, and he can get really loud. But I have not seen this new Conan out on the stands.
According to Gore Vidal, it's out this week. So
it's out this week. Okay, yeah, because I was in the comic book shop for a hot second, but I didn't really get to look too much at what was there. I only picked up one comic book this week, which is Amazing Spider-Man Annual #1.
All right, let's see that cover.
From the new series.
Oh, hold on. I hit mute and not solo.
You did it again.
Oh, is he still muted? Come on, unmute.
Yes.
Unmute. There we go.
Okay. So here's the cover. Nothing too impressive. It's a Halloween issue. It's connected to. It's actually somewhat connected to whatever the recent X-Men event was.
The artist left too much room for the logo.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, Spider-Man is so tiny there.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned, there's some demonic elements to it. It feels like this is the Halloween issue. I just realized how dark it is in here. It's the Halloween issue, and it has to deal with the Ben Reilly character who became a villain, and Madeline Pryor is back as the Goblin Queen. And apparently in New York City, there's for lack of a better term, an embassy where demonic aliens are supposed to be hanging out.
Sure, why not?
Who's the creative team?
This particular, because there's about four stories printed in here.
Oh, okay.
So Erica Schwartz is the writer. Julian Shaw is the artist. Andrew I don't know if I'm pronouncing this correctly. Andrew Dahlhaus is the
Oh, yeah.
colorist, and Joe Kamanji is the letterer. So this
Okay.
particular first story has to deal with this new to me, character trying to break out Ben Riley from that particular embassy. So it's not, even though they're calling it Hell in New York, it's really not. It's a placeholder where the demons are being held. So think Arkham in Manhattan, and
For demons.
for demons. And so this character is trying to break Ben out because they're dating, and Spider-Man gets tossed into the mix.
Uh-huh.
And I guess this seems like this was an after story to a crossover event that happened already, and this is where the characters are now. And then it kind of ends basically on a cliffhanger that spoilers, Ben does not make it out. And so
What? Somebody died? Or it just didn't? Oh,
he,
it's just not in
he,
prison. Just
he doesn't
still in
break out.
prison.
Right, he doesn't break out of the prison. Then there's another story in here that
I didn't
has to
realize
deal.
Ben Riley was a villain now.
He became a villain named, I want to say it's Chasma, Chasm,
Chasm.
Chasm. So he's become this villain named Chasm. Don't know why. Just, this is what happens to clones, I guess. And this is the costume, I think, because I've seen different renditions of that costume.
Ah.
So that's what it looks like. It looks like a pain to draw, to be honest with you. So he now has this female pumpkin lady goblin-ish character.
That's not
Again, these are all...
Madeline Pryor?
No, that is not. She is in this issue, but that's not her. Madeline is the head of this organization. Or more so, she's like the warden.
Okay.
There we go. So she's like the warden, and she's lamenting the fact that there's so much paperwork to deal with running this place. So it's a nice little story to, I guess, catch up where these characters are at the moment. I'm guessing eventually they'll bring them back at some point. But this was, I don't know if all new annuals are like this. So there's about 3 stories that take place. So here's a completely different story and different art style.
Okay.
That's dealing with Mary Jane Watson and her aunt, who we find out has been taking drugs from Krakoa, so it's connected to the X-Men.
Huh.
And this also has something to do with the Hellfire Gala that happened recently. And I know nothing of that because I haven't been picking up any of the X-Men books.
Huh.
So it looks like people are being affected by a drug that's coming out of Krakoa. And it's 2 stories. Sorry, not 3. I thought it was 3 stories, but there's 2 stories in this. And let's see if they credit the second story.
The old find the credits game.
Yeah,
I just played it with Old Dog.
Doesn't look like they do.
Huh.
So, but it's definitely a different art style. It's not bad. I do like it. But again, it's like, oh wait, here we go.
Sleepy Reader just walked to the shop and bought Conan while listening.
David Lopez is the artist. KJ Diaz is the colorist.
Well, I don't know anyone who works for Marvel anymore in terms of their creative teams.
I don't know. I even when I was looking at the editors' names, The only one I recognize is Nick Lowe and C.B. Sabowski. All the
Yeah.
other names I do not recognize.
Time just keeps on marching.
There you go. Look at that. Marvel survived even without us there.
Can you believe it? How crazy is that?
It is insane. And here's an ad for the Uncanny Spider-Man, because at some point, Nightcrawler is going to become Spider-Man.
Because why not? Oh, you're killing Paolo. Stop it.
Dude, it's a franchise. More Spider-Man. I need more pictures of Spider-Man.
Yeah, nothing means anything. Do whatever.
And from the Everything Old is New Again, Silver Surfer, Rebirth, Legacy. Look at those names, Ron Mars and Ron Lim.
All right.
Using the old Infinity Watch logo.
Look at that.
Jam DeMatteis is doing a Magneto series.
Tom DeFalco is writing a new Secret Wars series. They're going back to Secret Wars. Pat Olaf is doing the artwork. I'm all for that. There was one other Spider-Man.
Hey, at least Marvel is embracing the nostalgia crowd, you know?
And we also have coming up a book called Spine Tingling Spider-Man. Issue number 0.
Okay.
He's extra scary.
Uh-huh. Spider Slayer Stalks Spider-Man. Coming in September.
Spider-Man. Another book I picked up this week is Frank Frazetta's Mothman, number 2 of 5.
Oh, okay. Have you been enjoying that series? Because I know you mentioned it before. Yeah.
That's what's so funny about it. It's not... I picked up the first issue just on a lark because Dawn Attacks, the other Frank Frazetta one I bought, just ended. And there's the Mothman. And the Mothman is like this goofy teenage guy who stole a spaceship from wherever out in space and accidentally crashed it on Earth. And now you've got these two feuding, like the Hatfields and McCoys, who are feuding with each other. And one of them in the first issue put a hand grenade on a drone to try and ended up killing one. So this issue, we have a funeral. We have the Mothman just kind of gets his translator working finally. We get a guy doing a podcast about the Mothman, and the cop stops him and is like, listen, you got these bad dudes following you. Why don't you just let me know where you're going? He's like, no, I have a scoop. And the Mothman just kind of shows up at this old woman's house. He's like, listen, I got to get my spaceship fixed. Can you help me with this? And she thinks he's the angel of death coming to take her. So she's trying to outdrink the angel of death. She keeps giving him booze. So now the Mothman is drunk, and her like niece walks in. The Mothman flies into the ceiling, and it is nothing like I expected it to be.
Not at all.
Which
when you were
good.
Describing it, just makes me. It's like they take these stories by looking at that piece of artwork, and this writer was like, you know what that tells me?
I need some hillbillies having a feud.
Who the hell still says scoop?
I don't know if he said scoop or if it's me saying scoop.
Okay.
Let's see. He said...
Oh, Jared, you can see the deers running around in that background there. I just saw a bunch of deers run by. Yeah.
The mirror is reflecting my front window. I must have ran by. That's like a mirror behind me.
Ran by.
Behind my head. Where's the mirror? It's over here. Whoops.
It's on the other side, yeah.
And a deer. Yeah, they've been running by this evening. But yeah, it's been fun stuff. Who's doing this? Script Tim Hedrick, art Luis Guaranja, colors Oscar Carreño, letters Jacob Bascal. So it's been mysterious creature spotted in the woods. And in the beginning, he's talking to the dog since he thinks the dog is a sentient being. Why wouldn't he? He's trying to get his translator to work, talking to the dog, and the dog just runs away. So he doesn't know if his translator works. But This one took me by surprise. That, and it's a mini series, so it's like for 5 issues, I can, it's not going to go on forever. So for 5 issues, I can enjoy it and then not think about it again.
Scoop.
See what the guys at Opus come up with their Frank Frazetta license next. All right, who wants to do a read, rip, and slab? Let me see what I have. Let me see what I have. I think we can go to September 1969.
Why not?
There we go. We got Superman's Girlfriend, Lois Lane, number 97, Surfing Wheels, number 1, and Boris Karloff, Tales of Mystery, number 28. Look at that. I put a number 1 issue in there. Surf and Wheels.
Surf and Wheels.
You can't get enough stories of surfing and motocross.
Because they naturally go together.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to slab Boris Karloff and read Surf and Wheels and rip Lois Lane.
Wow, he knew what to do. He didn't even have to take a moment.
No, I have zero interest in Lois Lane, and I absolutely hate Laurie Lemaris.
Some of those Lois Lane stories are cheesy DC Silver Age fun.
Well, so probably so are Surf and Wheels. This the one that has Alex Tothard?
Surf and Wheels? Not that I know of. I've never heard of Surf and Wheels before, so there was a lot of type on that cover. A lot of nice different logos. The White Angels. Here they come. I mean, there's like we get the Charlton typeface. We get the Surf and Wheels logo type. We've got the surfing type. And then we got 2 different motorcycle types in there. That's a lot of typography. Not to mention, what is that? Oh, I see. There's, along with our Surf and Wheels logo, we've got a surf icon and a wheels double icon. They jammed everything into that cover.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in that cover.
It's certainly not well designed, but there's a lot of well designed stuff in it.
I would slab Boris Karloff. I would read Lois Lane because I need to know about those other women in the background. And I would rip Surf and Wheels.
And look,
I enjoyed those silly stories from the Silver Age Superman books.
There's a line right down the middle of Surf and Wheels that you can tear on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'll try to tear it right down that line. You could almost fold it like the mail away the comics that got mailed.
Yeah. Slab Lois, read Boris, and rip Surf and Wheels. Sorry, Paolo. Toth did some race car strips. I don't know. Though he did Hot Wheels for DC in the 70s.
Right.
I know those are his most famous ones. See, Slab Surf, read Boris, rip Lois, Dolphin the surfboard, Superman offering tiny flamingos to the girl.
No, I'm going to Dolphin, the soldier on the foreground in Boris Karloff.
Uh-huh.
And I'm going to insert the flamingos in Superman's fantasy about Laurie Lemaris and his former girlfriends.
My flamingos are going to be hanging 10 on Surf and Wheels. That's where it's going to be a flamingo on the front of his board hanging 10.
My Dolphin is going to be riding one of the wheels. So he's going to be are they bicycles? I can't tell. They're motorcycles.
I think they're motorcycles. They're motocross.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to have my Dolphin riding the motorcycle because, of course, And I'm going to have the flamingos hanging out with the war that's going on the Boris Karloff book. Because I really don't know if that's supposed to be an explosion or is it the blob coming out?
Oh, I think it might be a blob. It's alive, growing deadly. Yeah, that's a blob.
Yeah, I think it's the blob. Or it's pink cotton candy.
Oh, you can win a sweepstakes with that Boris Karloff, too. 1,000 prizes.
There's been so many comic book covers with sweepstakes stuff on it. Does anyone ever knew if anybody ever won those? Like you could win this bike. There was the 7-Eleven one that was like a couple of grand or something.
That settles it for me. I'm going to rip Boris Karloff to get my revenge on all those sweepstakes covers that ruined the comics in the early 80s. I'm going to slab Surfing Wheels.
They took up so much space at the top of the comics.
You know where the dolphin is going for me?
Where?
With, what's her name? Lamore. I'm going to turn her bottom half into a dolphin. So she's going to be a dolphin mermaid rather than a regular mermaid.
That sounds gruesome.
Yeah.
And of course, the flamingos are going with Surfing Wheels hanging 10.
Mm-hmm.
So is that Supergirl with the green and white?
No, it's Superwoman.
Superwoman?
Yes, it's one of the 50 Superwomen.
Who's the one in the bustier?
That one she seems familiar from some Silver Age Superman cover.
It wouldn't be the Silver Age Cat Grant, would it? She exists for the Silver Age?
Lori Lemmy.
Can we read the text? Because Superman may be naming them all on the cover.
Liro, Laura, and oh my goodness, I can't even read it.
Superman, please.
Lori Lamaris is the.
They're all probably LLs.
Is the mermaid.
Luma Lin
is Superwoman, I think.
And Lyra Leroy. All girls I loved. And with the initials LL, Lois, I must go to them.
Yeah, that's why I'm going to put the flamingos in there. Why are you thinking about flamingos, Superman?
Me, I love surfing flamingo. Wow, I just realized all three of these have a lot of type on them.
Yeah.
More than usual. The three super sirens.
And even more than usual for their type. There are two very large speech bubbles on Lois Lane. Surfing Wheels has to describe two features, and the sweepstakes thing in the Boris Karloff. That's what gives it too much type.
We're professionals around here. We call them word balloons. Speech bubbles makes the hair on the back of our neck stand up. There are fonts like that Boris Karloff now.
Yeah.
By the way, because of that, I'm going to rename thought bubbles as imagination clouds.
Imagination clouds. Oh, I like that.
That's not too bad.
But that's how you can tell the difference between an amateur and a professional. As the professionals know the right names to call things by.
They're all bubbles. All of them.
Because balloons have tails, bubbles do not have tails. That's how you remember the difference. Tales of great Ulysses, the sirens softly singing. Whose song is that? I don't know. One of those 60s psychedelic rock songs. Tales of Great Ulysses by like Cream or somebody.
That I would not know.
You couldn't tell from my version what it is because I'm a terrible singer. But if you heard the actual song, you'd go, "Oh, that one."
Maybe I'm fairly musically illiterate, so I'm not too sure on many of them. It's like
You make us no promises.
Yep.
So what do you think about Jeff Sebesta saying that the 90s were the worst decade in music?
I didn't even get into that. I knew he was just starting trouble. I was like that. I saw that and was like, that is so ridiculous. I can't even read through it. He was just looking for trouble.
But what about they suck? What about they suck? What about they only have an album? What about?
My part was they were left over from the 80s, huh? Huh? They existed in the 90s. He was just looking to argue with people. I'm sure of it.
And that musical genre is irrelevant because I didn't like it.
Yeah.
Also, sampling in hip hop is apparently bad.
Holy minimalism was invented in the 90s. Your whole argument is irrelevant. Let's see. Another comic I got this week was the latest issue of Rogue Sun. Issue number 14.
Oh, yeah.
Where he has to team up with his dead dad in the star sign world and try to get his body back. Because in this one, in the beginning of the book, his estranged father, who he hated, died. And it turns out his father was this superhero Rogue Sun who saved the world a dozen times. And so he inherited what's called the Star Stone, which gives him all the Power Rangers. Man, all the people who loved Power Rangers are now making comic books, aren't they? So like he's got the super suit that gives him superpowers.
Tragic, isn't it?
And then he found out he could talk to some of the old Rogue Sons who gave him advice. The first one was his father, who he kicked out. He said, "You got to leave, Dad. I can't talk to you." So this other guy came by who was like 400, who eventually took over his body. And now he's kind of disembodied, trying to look to get his body back. And all the other Rogue Sons still live on inside the Star Stone. So now he got kicked inside the Star Stone, finds his father, and they have to team up to try and get him his body back.
So it's like the Matrix leadership. It's like the Matrix of leadership on Transformers.
And this is part of the massive verse. He's fighting old Rogue Sons in their place, and the Rogue Son who's got his body is like making friends. And enemies. So, fun superhero stuff. Who does this one? Hold on. Let me tell you. Written by Ryan Parrott. The artists are someone just named Abel, A-B-E-L, and Marco Renna. The colorist is Natalia Marquez. Becca Carey on letters. Production artist is Wesley Griffith. Don't know who that is, but since they list them, I'm going to tell you.
There you go. I'm all for crediting everybody.
Yeah, why not? So we got to say, using that rich black on the back cover to give us those waves, I got to, probably not the production artist's idea, but I'm not a fan of that. I don't like my comics wavy.
Or, an all black cover that goes right to the spine, which is going to get ticks.
Well, that I don't care about so much because I'm not that type of collector. But I understand that trouble.
Yeah. I myself have been going through my various boxes of trade paperbacks.
Okay.
To decide what to keep and what to get rid of and stuff like that. And finding books that I know I bought, I just don't remember anything about them. I haven't looked through them yet, but you know me, I love crossovers, and I found this Superman Savage Dragon issue.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that. I have both of them.
I don't remember that at all.
But
Don't think I have it.
I'm looking through it, and it's like I don't remember this story anymore.
What year
But
did it come out?
I
The
am
90s?
happy to see the original Savage Dragon. Let's see. This is 2002.
Oh, wow.
So Superman and Savage Dragon Chicago. The name of the issue.
Okay.
And it's just really cool to see, to see the original Savage Dragon or the police uniform Savage Dragon again.
Yeah.
So it's kind of neat. So I'm looking forward to revisiting this.
Right.
Yeah. The other one is Metropolis.
I haven't stumbled onto that one yet. And what I did find, which again, this is issue 2, so I don't even know if I have the rest of the issues, but it's Batman versus Predator.
Oh, okay.
So this was a Dark Horse one.
Who's drawing that one?
Let's see.
Because the Superman versus Predator drawn by Lee Weeks is really nice looking.
This one's Dave Gibbons is writing. Andy Kubert is the penciler.
Oh, okay.
Adam Kubert is the inker and letterer. Shelley Van Valkenburg is the colorist.
What year did that come out?
This one came out 1992.
Oh, wow. That was...
And this one's in Dark Horse.
Early on.
Back when Dark Horse was relevant.
Yeah.
So it's like...
Now, here's a question.
Forward to revisiting these. Yes.
How do you get rid of the trade paperbacks you don't want?
There are 2 ways. The first way is bringing them to Book Off in Manhattan and selling them for like $1.40 a piece, maybe $1.50.
Right.
And that's about it. If you're lucky, you get $2.
Yep.
What I'm going to try next, I haven't tried it yet. I was looking at other sellers on eBay.
Uh-huh.
And instead of trying to sell them individually, I'm going to bundle maybe 5 of them together and see how that goes. What I found interesting is I saw somebody did 5 and did them as an auction, and they went for a couple of $100.
Well, there must be rare ones.
I would assume so. They didn't look any different to me than other than they're the ones that have the Marvel had the red logo for a while.
Okay, they might be out of print.
That's what I'm guessing.
Because the problem is I've tried to, being that I have so many trade paperbacks that people gave me. Like I have all of Jerry's out in the garage. I have, over the years, people have just been like, but mostly they were comps to them. Do you want these trade paperbacks? I'm just going to throw them out. And I'm like, I'll take them. But getting rid of the, like I tried to sell them on eBay years ago, but the problem is most people, unless it happens to be something that went out of print and is rare and goes for $50 to $100, most people expect to pay $5 for a trade paperback. Because they really don't want to. Because there's so many unwanted trade paperbacks, and I tried all different ways to sell them in bundles, in groups, individually. And the problem I also found with them is the worst customers on eBay are the people who are looking for something for nothing. If you're selling a guy a $200 comic, that's actually easy. That guy, you give him what he wants. He's not looking for a bargain. He's buying a $200 trade paperback, a $200 omnibus. He's not looking for a bargain. You're selling a guy a $5 trade paperback. Well, this is wrong with it. They're the most trouble because they're looking for something for nothing. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, stop wasting my time I sold someone a $5 trade paperback. May have cost them $7 with shipping. And they're like, "Oh, I accidentally ordered the wrong one. Can I return it?" And when you return something on eBay, they pay the postage. So I'm like, "Sure, return it." And you not only do they have to pay the postage, return it first class.
Yep.
So the guy was like, forget it. I'm like, if I buy the wrong thing for $6, I'm just like, oh well, it's not worth the time to me to try and return a $6 item. Go to the post office, but I'm like, why do you bought the wrong one? Write it off.
Yeah.
But no,
Yeah.
people who are looking for something for nothing don't want to.
Yeah, I gave a few away.
I've been lucky that I've only ever had maybe 2 returns on eBay.
Yeah, I've never. I usually put not even returnable now. I'm like,
yeah, because you could really go into eBay
right.
and play around with the nuances of what can be ordered, what could not be. I even go as far as like I don't put anything up that isn't worth like $10
Right.
or so, just so it doesn't really have waste much time. I do have like $1 items just so I can fill up the store with stuff, like my Star Wars cards, that type of thing where it's like I paid next to nothing for those cards. So
And that's
I put
easy
them
enough.
up there.
You stick one
Yeah,
in an envelope, you stick a stamp on it, and it's gone.
exactly.
That's
And for
not like sending a TPB, which you got to make sure is okay. Put it in a good envelope. Blah blah blah. It's a little different.
for
Cards are a lot
those,
easier.
yeah, for the trade paperbacks or for comics in general, I had ordered from was it bagsunlimited.com.
Right.
I get all my supplies from them. So I had bought various types of cardboards and cardboard type envelopes to put everything in. And then from eBay, because I have an eBay account, I get from them, I pay for it, but I get a discount. It's not this, but it's like this type of a padded envelope.
Okay.
But it has the eBay logo and all that stuff on it. So that I put as like the final protection because that's padded outside of everything else, and then I just put it in that and then slap a label on it and let it go. So I've taken time to really look at price wise what things cost and stuff like that to try to make it as easy as possible because I want to be able to put the item up, sell it, and then move on. And
That's
again,
what's tough
it's like,
to do with trade paper. Well, like I said, people expect to pay $5 for a trade paperback. So if you've got a $5 with $4 shipping, they don't want to pay $9 for a $5 trade paperback. And if you put it up for $1, you may as well throw it in the trash because for all the hassle and headache that making, you put up a trade paperback for $1, you're not even making $1 on it.
and one of the other things that I saw while I was looking up other sellers. Now, with eBay, you have to remember to not only look at what people want because people want everything, but see what they sold for. And I haven't seen anything sold for yet, but I've seen people advertising their trade paperback. But don't forget, inside there are key issues in here too.
Ah,
That was an interesting thing I saw someone
key issue
write.
trade paperback.
So trade paperback with reprints of key issues in there. And I was like, interesting use of the wording. It was like, here's an affordable key. So you get the key because it's reprinted in this trade paperback. That I found interesting. So, yeah. So basically, as I'm going through the boxes, making a decision what I'm going to keep, I'm going to attempt to do the first thing I'm going to attempt to do is do maybe 5 issues. See what that looks like, see what that weighs, get an idea, and then try to see if that works as well. And then maybe I'll do a couple of
getting rid of
TikToks.
trade paperbacks is tough.
Yeah.
Tougher than comics.
But that's why I figured I'll give the bundle a try and see what happens.
Or you go down to the store and get $1.50 for them. Huh.
There you go.
Slab
And
surf,
that's the thing,
read
because
book.
it's like,
Mind
okay.
the Comics is having Superman offer the tiny flamingos to the girl, just like you were, Paolo. He's on board. Superman is so deep, loving any LL. Yeah. If your initials are LL, Superman's in love with you.
Uh-huh. Lois Lane, Lex Luthor, they were always there.
Let's see, the last comic I got for this week, Monstrous, number 46. I wonder if this is one of, I can't, besides like Savage Dragon, I can't think of a higher number right now of comics than 46 that I have of Monstrous. This might be the second highest number. Good issue. This series has actually come into focus recently as we've moved away from the human world and all their political machinations moving up to war, and moved into this world where the old gods are trapped, and our lead character, Mariko the she-wolf, is kind of trapped over there. It used to be Mariko, that's her name, Mariko, was that her mother? Mariko the she-wolf, Meika. I can't even remember all the characters' name. And Zin is the monster trapped inside her. And now they've moved on to this world of the old gods where she's trapped inside the monster. And they're trying to figure out how to leave the world of the old gods. And the characters who are cats are trapped. Some of them are trapped over there too. So this issue was actually a lot clearer than it's been in a few issues, because the story is finally coming to a head with all these characters are getting in one place trying to escape this world and coming up with an actual plan to escape the world. So it's sort of like, it's hard to describe because the plot is so fantasy involved with lots of different factions. But this was a good issue of it. I particularly liked it, issue 46. I tried to look up if this was going to end soon, but there's no indication that it is. So I'm okay with that. Monstrous in the world, just continuing with this story. And we got a baby at the end, a monster baby at the end. You guys ever seen Monstrous? Does Monstrous make it over to Europe?
Yes. Never been interested.
I've seen it, but I may have picked up some of the first issues.
Yeah.
But I never really stuck with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but beautiful artwork.
It's different. It's not like every other comic out there. It's got a really sort of involved fantasy story that's sort of not usual for comics.
Okay.
Keeping track of everything isn't always easy.
That's why I stopped over 20 years ago.
Stopped keeping track of things?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now he keeps track of the behind-the-scenes creator and their histories.
Graphic Man is having some health issues, so we temporarily moved the Fossil show to grow to our Lots channel.
Okay.
And instead of showing comic, I showed some old auto racing yearbooks. So another thing that I'm keeping track of.
I don't think I follow Gratu. I'm going to find that.
Because Gratu usually does he can do a 1 hour video just talking to the camera while he's bagging and boarding his comics.
Okay.
And then if he has Gotham City Comics on, Kevin, the store owner, will be showing everything on camera during the next 3 hours.
I have never understood those guys who don't bag and board their comics right away. Not that I board mine, but as soon as I get them home, I slip them into bags. But there are some people who let them build up until they get 50, 100, 200, and then they spend hours bagging and boarding their comics.
Well,
and I'm like, why didn't you just do it as you went along? But those are two different
that
types of
might be
people.
the fun of just doing that in one.
It could, I don't know.
Yeah, well, some of those comics had 20-year-old bags, so.
Oh, so he's rebagging and boarding comics.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's a different thing.
Mhm.
Yeah, because he has a lot of old horror comics.
Yeah, that I understand. That I understand.
And the magazines, he has a lot of. He prefers the magazines, so he has a lot of them. He's always looking for famous monsters of Filmland. And it's shown where you can buy a few. So
Sleepy Reader just completed his Savage Sword of Conan collection. I'm like, well, that's the first person I've heard.
Ever?
It seems like Jared is the only one who's stuck with Monstrous. I lasted 6. Yeah, I don't see. I know it's a pretty popular comic that wins awards, but I don't know anyone besides me who buys it. I haven't seen anyone on YouTube besides me who buys it. I wonder if it's one of those comics that's more popular in trade paperbacks or with women or something. Because I know a lot of women often like fantasy stories more than dudes do. And it's 2 women creators. So I don't know. But yeah, I am. Well, Sleepy also gave up on all new comics. So I think it's been a few months now since he gave up his pull list because he decided he wanted to read the plethora of back issues he has, and he still buys back issues. Like I said, he might be the first one I've ever heard of with a complete Savage Sword of Conan collection. I don't know I've never heard of anyone else having one. I've known people who have read Savage Sword of Conan. I've known Conan fans, but I've never known anyone who completed a collection of Savage Sword of Conan. Especially in this day and age.
Yeah.
Now no one even knows what it is. But I think that is Savage Sword of Conan is something I'd rather read the original issues of than the reprints. Because I don't think they've done like the omnibuses are always small. They're not magazine size. I have not seen a collected edition of the Savage Sword of Conan that I thought was any good.
And don't they usually like edit the art in it as well?
That Marvel did in the 90s. I don't know if Dark Horse did. I don't know if they're using those files or not. But when Marvel reprinted Savage Sword in the 90s, they edited all the nudity out of it. But I'm not sure what Dark Horse did when they. But if you ever seen the Dark Horse did them in black and white sort of essentials editions, but they were comic book size. They weren't magazine size.
Yeah, those were not censored.
Those were not censored, and they also didn't open up flat, if I remember correctly.
No.
They were bound pretty poorly.
Well, it's a soft cover 500-page book.
Yeah. You're right. You get what you pay for. It was cheap. You're not going to get great binding with it. But I'd rather read. I would rather. Matter of fact, I specifically didn't buy it or read it because I'd rather not read Savage Sword of Conan than read sort of that version of it. But I also read enough Savage Sword of Conan in my youth to get my fill. If I'd never read it before, maybe I would have bought a book like that. But I think I'd rather read the original comics of that. Not that I have any plans of getting a complete Savage Sword of Conan run. But if, Sleepy ever wants to mail me his, I'll read it.
Oh, it's a bit like Conan the Barbarian. During the 80s, Roy Thomas quits Marvel, and the quality of the story starts going down because they're not adapting directly the Robert E. Howard universe.
I think there was less care putting into Conan in the 80s. Even John Buscema's pencils got more sparse. Because that's when I gave up reading Conan. I probably gave up reading Conan somewhere in the early 80s when I gave up Marvel and DC in general. And I was maybe even before. I just remember the stories getting more sparse, the artwork getting more sparse, and it seemed like the care just wasn't put into it anymore. Which happens.
Well, it was that writer that sued Gary Groth, right? Michael Fleischer.
Was that him writing it? I don't even remember.
Damien, was it Michael Fleischer? The guy who sued Gary Groth? Because of something that
by the way, that was one of the weirdest lawsuits ever, too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Cartoonist Kayfabe. They read the deposition, didn't they?
Did they? I didn't see that one. I didn't know. But yeah, that was one of the weirdest because Harlan Ellison was actually commenting him.
Yeah.
By calling him what he called them. But it was like a Harlan Ellison compliment. But Fleischer was having none of it.
Yeah,
to him it was an insult, and he slandered him. And it was like, huh? I always found that such a strange situation. Did you ever read the Fleischer, Jim Aparo Spectre stories?
No.
No?
And I've never really been interested in solo Spectre.
Oh, if you read any Spectre stories, read the Michael Fleischer, Jim Aparo Spectre stories from the 70s because they're so freaking weird and violent. I remember I got my hands on some of those probably in the late 70s, early 80s. I was still in high school, maybe. And they were like nothing from DC because it was like the Spectre was killing people. And he was killing them in gruesome, horrible ways. And there was Jim Aparo art, so they were well drawn. He would like have, the Spectre cut somebody in half with a giant pair of scissors. And it was like, what the hell is this? It was really like nothing from DC in that day and age. So I would recommend checking them out if you just want to see why Harlan Ellison called, Michael Fleischer a gruesome son of a bitch or whatever he called him. I can't even remember what it was. When he was complimenting his horror stories, which made it even weirder that Michael Fleischer sued him because his stories were gruesome. Adventure comics, I think they were. I have some on my shelf over there somewhere, but they were like early 70s issues of adventure comics by Michael Fleischer and Jim Aparo.
Yeah, I never saw those.
They really are worth checking out. I don't know how. I got them from like a garage sale or something. But they might have been the only DC books from the 70s that I liked. What were your favorite DC 70s books, Paolo?
Anything? I didn't have any.
It's a tough age. What about you, Wilson? Any favorite DC 1970s books?
No, not really. I was
Walt Simonson's Manhunter. That could be one.
That could be one.
Yeah, I do have a special edition.
I was more for whatever superhero stuff that was going on around that time. So I was big into getting like the reprints that were the family books.
Oh, okay.
Because they were
Commando, Last Boy on Earth. That could be someone's favorite. That was a good one.
That could definitely be. Yeah.
I only really became interested in the Fourth World when I was already an adult. So that's when I read the books. Also, I bought the black and white essentials that DC did, the showcases for the Legion, and I really got into the Silver Age Legion, and all the way through the 70s. I think the books that went up to 73 or 74 before they canceled the showcase line.
I think
Do you
also
guys
Superboy.
do you guys remember the DC reprints? They didn't reprint it all, but some of the Fourth World reprints that DC did in the 90s, where this is how unpopular. I mean, Kirby was still not that popular in the 90s. They printed them in black and white, the Kirby Fourth World stuff. Except they took one of the color plates and printed that. So it was like these weird grayscale versions of Jack Kirby's Fourth World.
Because there were collages.
No, it was because they didn't want to print them in color.
Yeah,
they wanted to print them in black and white, but they didn't want to print just the black plate.
Yeah, but it doesn't make any sense.
And they were like the first reprints.
Yeah,
first collected editions of his stuff, and it really did him no justice. I mean, it was like, what? And that may have been the first time I read those.
Yeah, what New Gods? But I think it makes less sense to reprint those in black and white.
Yeah,
because
especially if you're going to use one of the color plates.
Yeah,
it's not meant to be seen like that.
Because if your entire line is of reprints is color,
but that'll give you an idea how even then how Jack Kirby wasn't a fan favorite like he is now.
They reprinted a lot of ridiculous stuff. It wouldn't have mattered if Kirby was a fan favorite or not.
I'm just saying
when DC started reprinting stuff, they reprinted a lot of stuff even during the 90s.
Mm-hmm. But if they thought if he was popular, they would have put it in color. They did not want to put the time and effort into it.
I think somebody had some sort of brain fart when they decided to reprint that. Somebody probably thought that they were showing Kirby in its pristine original format.
I was told it was that or nothing because they didn't want to put any money into it.
It doesn't make sense.
You're right. It makes no sense. I'm not saying it makes sense. I'm just saying that's how crazy it was that they didn't think they could sell the Kirby Fourth World. That's how that's like Kirby now is more popular than he was in the 80s and 90s, in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And that's kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah, I could see it being one of those business decisions where it's like, we are not going to spend money on this.
Right.
But we don't want to lose the copyright
because our lawyers demanded it.
Right. So it's like, we should print this so we have, that this exists this particular year.
Right. But it's crazy to think that's how unpopular his work was for 30 years. I mean, of course, there were tons of people who loved him. But the general public, Kirby was a nobody to them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's nutty to think that. Now that DC has a whole Kirby line and half of their universe is based on the Fourth World.
Which I don't think I really got into.
I only read the whole thing from beginning to end about 10 years ago when they came out with those omnibuses. That is the first time I got to read the whole, because it was reprinted nowhere. It was a few years before my time. There were always copies around, but you had to hunt. If you wanted a complete Jack Kirby Fourth World, you had to do that on your own. You had to hunt them all down, and nobody was doing that.
Right.
It's not like guys were bringing all of it to their Comic Cons. You had to hunt here and there and get them all. And when those omnibuses finally, one of the things I liked about it too, some people complained about it, but I liked them. I eventually sold my omnibuses because they went out of print and became a lot of money. They printed them in the order they came out. So it's like, it wasn't, here's an omnibus of Mr. Miracle. Here's an omnibus of the New Gods. Here's an omnibus of, I can't even remember the other series now.
Forever People.
The Forever People. They did, I think did it start with Mr. Miracle? Was that the first one? Or was I think they had the Jimmy Olsens in there too. So it's like each month.
It starts with Jimmy Olsen.
It started with Jimmy Olsen. And then, like, you got the bunch of Jimmy Olsens in the beginning. Then you got New Gods #1, Mr. Miracle #1, and the Forever People #1, which maybe all came out the same. And then they printed because you're supposed to read the series all as one big thing. So you read them sort of as they came out chronologically, all 4 series mixed together. I really enjoyed reading them like that. It was good. Well, we should wind down now. It's about time. I've got people coming over tomorrow for my barbecue. Got everything set up.
Very cool.
All right, so you guys have a good night out there. We'll let Paulo get to bed. And we will catch you all later.
Have a great weekend, everybody.
Have a good one. We will catch you next time.